Okay, thanks very much first of all, for the invitation to come here today. My name is Aidan O'Reilly. I'm with the department with the social housing area. Specifically, my area, I'm with the social housing capital investment side. So we have different branches of the housing division of the Department of Environment that deal with different elements of the service. And I'm with the capital side, but colleagues who deal with other parts will also be talking to you here as well. I'm based in the department's office in Ballina and Mayo. From Ballymun originally, in Ballina, and now here I am on the 13th of June in Longford, with nothing else to do, better to do on a Saturday, but sure, look, it's a bit of a journey, but hopefully, look, the intention here is to take this document, the social housing strategy, that came out in the autumn of last year, and try and explain it, you know, in the way that it's being taken forward and implemented from the department side, but obviously, crucially, local authorities are absolutely central to the delivery of this document, of the aims and the targets in there. So I'll be looking to try and explain what's behind this and some elements of the targets as well. So hopefully, you know, you may be quite familiar with that document, you may be quite familiar with the targets in it, but if you're not, hopefully what I'll talk about will give you some clarification of it. So the strategy came out late last year, and it's a strategy then to sort of map out the approach to delivery of social housing in Ireland out to 2020. So it's a significant, obviously very significant document for a very significant area of service, and one that's very central to both to government centrally, but also obviously to local authorities and to the citizens as well, who you would engage with on an ongoing basis. Part of the arrangement for implementing the strategy, and just to make sure it's successfully implemented, is there's a sort of a governance arrangement that sits over the whole process and tries to make sure everything that's, all the targets that are in there are getting done and getting implemented. So it's quite strong on having oversight within the strategy itself. You've got a social housing strategy oversight group, and it's chaired by Minister Kelly. So he would sit at those meetings, which would usually be about once every month, once every 6 weeks. And himself actually, and Minister Coffey, who's the Minister for Construction 2020 in our department, would usually both sit in on all the meetings and that. So it's getting a high level, I suppose, attention, unlike a lot of committees and structures that we in the civil service would be used to. These ones are being personally chaired by the ministers to try and make sure the actions happen. There's a range of different areas there that are getting tackled in the strategy as well. And because it all relates to different areas of implementation of strategy. So there's groups that are looking at things like finance, there's groups that are looking at things like the private rental sector, there's groups that are looking at local authority, housing, delivery and operations. So within the overall structure, there's a number of subgroups as well. Just given the audience that's here today, just maybe to highlight the fact that, again, you may be aware that specifically within the strategy, there's a specific task force that's been set up from the beginning for the Dublin area. So that encompasses the 4 Dublin authorities are part of the Dublin Social Housing Delivery Task Force. And in fact, a similar task force has just been set up now to cover the 2 Cork authorities. So just given the, I suppose, the centrality of the Dublin authorities, the need there, the importance and the centrality of them for delivery of social housing, it was decided to have a particular group that would focus in, bring the 4 Dublin authorities together, as well as them reporting into the national structures. The logic behind the strategy and the way it's worked out, in the strategy itself, in section 2.4 of the strategy, this is really the starting point of where the strategy came from. Now, this picked up the fact and identified the fact that the last health assessment of housing need that was done, that was undertaken in May 2013, so this was the last one done before the strategy was written, okay, was it identified 89,872 households qualified for social housing support. So that was the number, I suppose, that was the key number at the time the strategy was being developed. The strategy then to try and tackle that, because that's a key number, that's a key target, if you like, in it. The strategy adopts an approach of having what we call 3 pillars in the strategy. And I'm going to talk about Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 because they're about the delivery of housing. Pillar 3 is a piece about reform, and it covers things about rent framework, tenant purchase scheme, dealing with antisocial behaviour. I think Siobhan is going to talk a bit about that in a few minutes. So I'm just going to focus in on Pillar 1. And Pillar 1, again, this is a table that's in the document itself, a table that's in the strategy. And you'll see that the target there, the number that's there indicates that the intention of the strategy is to deliver 35,500 units of social housing via different methods that I'll talk about in a few minutes. Right? So there's an initial target that local authorities and approved housing bodies will deliver 35,000 social housing units over the life of the strategy. In addition to those 35,000 units, that's Pillar 1. Pillar 2 looks at the private rented sector, and it identifies the intention to get 75,000 units through the private rented sector for delivery for social housing needs as well. So you've got those two pieces, the Pillar 1, 35,000, Pillar 2, 75,000. Now, just to focus in for a couple of minutes on Pillar 1, the target, as I said there, is 35,000 units. It's going to be part funded by government funding on the current funding and government funding on capital. Government funding on current will be primarily by leasing units. So government funding and the targets in there will be for the leasing of units that by local authorities. On the capital side, the units there will be delivered by local authority building or buying social housing units. It will also be by approved housing bodies using the CAS scheme, the Capital Assistance Scheme that you might be familiar with, that delivers sheltered housing supports. So they'll be part of those targets as well. And also another target that we've had for the last few years is the void units, the boarded up and vacant units. We've had a target, this year of tackling 1,000 of those units across the country. And targets have been given to each individual local authority in the last few weeks to give them a target and give them funding from the government, from the department, to bring some of those vacant units back into productive use. So I'm just highlighting that the targets that we have in relation to the capital delivery under Pillar 1 of the strategy encompass what local authorities will do in terms of building units and buying units, what the approved housing bodies will do under the Capital Assistance Scheme, which will also be building units and do some buying units, and also the support that we're providing for void units as well, and getting them back. So they're the elements that will be covered by the targets there. You'll see that we have targets broken down. For 2015, the intention is to get, through these different methods, 5,386 units in 2015. In 2016 and 17, it's nearly 13,500 units. And then for 2018 to 20, through this method, it's intended to try and get 16,700 units. And those three give us our 35,000 unit delivery. So that's just a broad breakdown of the way that 35,000 that's mentioned in the strategy is broken down between those elements. Just to mention as well that in terms of my own area and something that the area that we're particularly involved in, which is the development, the building and buying of units particularly by the local authorities, but also by approved housing bodies as well, and the void units in that. Especially when it comes to planning for building units. We have a set of guidelines from that are issued. They're good to find out, I think they're 2007. So the document there is Quality Housing for Sustainable Communities. And in the department we have architectural advisors, we have quantity surveyors who look at cost issues. And when proposals come in from local authorities, they've been looked at against the guidelines that are in there. So the key issues there are that the units are socially and environmentally appropriate, architecturally appropriate, accessible and adaptable, safe, secure and healthy, and affordable and durable. Now, they're fairly straightforward issues in terms of a modern design approach, but that's what the department will be looking at. We don't, in the department, get into the space of deciding in a local authority you have to build here and you shouldn't build there. That's the local authority's business. We don't get into the individual space of the type of units, how many, whether they should be 2-bedroom, or it should be apartments or flats or whatever. That's all the local authority's business. When they come into the department, this is the sort of main headline criteria they'll be looked against. What's the, how the design is in terms of quality housing for sustainable communities. I suppose I'm not that awful long working in the social housing area, and I suppose growing up in Dublin, one of the things you'll notice obviously is the scale of social housing that would have been done in the 60s and 70s and 80s, you know, with big massive estates and that. Whereas nowadays the approach seems to be much smaller number of units, smaller clusters of units. And I suppose this would support that type of idea, you know, that building, having tenure mix and sustainable approaches to development, putting developments close to services and that, not having them remote from transports and that. So they're the type of things that the department would be engaged with the local authorities on. And our view would be that the best way to work forward a design for a new build proposal is for the local authority to do what it needs to do in consultation with the elected members and start talking to the department early on. Don't leave it until the design is 9/10 cooked and then come up to the department and say we're going to do it this way, and then the issues might be spotted. So we'd be encouraging local authorities to talk to the department's architectural advisors early on and make sure that when ultimately a project is signed off by the local authority, it can go through quite quickly from the department's point of view. The second pillar of the social housing strategy in terms of delivery is the delivery of units under the HAF scheme and the rental accommodation scheme. Now, Nina Murray, my colleague, who deals with some of these areas, is going to talk a bit more about that. But the target there is to get 75,440 units over the life of the strategy via those schemes, and that accounts for pillar 2 of the strategy. So I won't go into as much detail on that because Nina will cover it, but that's the second pillar of the strategy. So just going back in relation to the strategy, the original target figure I mentioned earlier, when the strategy was being developed, the key figure was 89,000, just under 90,000 units. And that was the number that I suppose the government was looking at the time as the key number they had to address. So what we've done with pillar 1 that I was just talking about is there's 35,000 units targeted under pillar 1. Under pillar 2, there's 75,000 units targeted under pillar 2. And if you combine the two of them, it's 111,000 units. So the idea is the delivery under those two pillars of the strategy will meet the number that was intended to be met with a bit to spare. Now, I suppose it wouldn't be appropriate just to say that that's it and it's fixed like that until 2020. It is recognised that waiting lists are changing, possibly going up. You yourselves will probably know that a lot more closely from your ongoing dealings with your people in your areas. So it is intended that over the course of the strategy, there would be two things that would be important. There is intended to be more frequent housing needs assessments done. I think at the moment it's been, how frequent is it at the moment, John?
We were every 3 years.
Every 3 years, but it's intended to be annually from next year on, is it? Yeah, so from next year on, it's intended that there will be annual housing needs assessments. And if those annual housing needs assessments identify bigger numbers on the waiting list, the idea would be, under the strategy, there would be a review, like a thorough review of the strategy, and it might be that the targets in the strategy have to be adjusted if the housing need assessment shows the need for that. But in terms of the starting position for the strategy, 90,000, the intention was to deliver 90,000 households, the intention was to deliver 111,000 units through those different methods. And that's, I suppose, the logic of the strategy. Just to briefly mention, in relation to, I was talking a bit about the build of units and that. The other key method of delivery of units is under the current expenditure programme. So you might have heard before of the social housing leasing initiative that we've had. So we've sort of rebranded that now and we're calling it the Social Housing Current Expenditure Programme. there was a bit of confusion about what the programme delivers because it's not all traditional leasing. There are other things that the funding available in that can be used to deliver. So it was sort of rebranded, and what we'd be emphasising under the social housing current expenditure side, as distinct from the capital, the build side, is that local authorities have a range of delivery mechanisms. They can lease or rent directly themselves. They can work with approved housing bodies who can lease or build or purchase units with the funding available through the CAF scheme, that you may be familiar with as well. And also we work with the NAMA special purpose vehicle to provide units to AHBs, to approved housing bodies as well, or to local authorities. So the existing funding that we have available for the department can deliver through all of those methods. So that's why we sort of took the leasing name away from it and are calling it the Social Housing Current Expenditure Programme. The last point there, we were just saying that local authorities, it's important that they interact locally with the approved housing bodies and that they deliver using all of the mechanisms, whether it's local authorities themselves leasing or renting, or working with approved bodies, or working with the NAMA provision as well. There's just some targets under the Social Housing Current Expenditure Programme. In 2015, 3,000 units for the main current expenditure programme, and the rental accommodation scheme in 2015 is the target there is to get 2,000 new units there, and then you can see the targets for 16 and 17. It goes up to 8,400 units under the social housing current expenditure programme, which again would be mainly half, down to half mostly. Okay, the last thing I'm just going to highlight to you is the issue of targets and individual targets for each local authority. Again, you may be fully aware of this, but just in case you're not, each local authority, in relation to the figures I've been talking about on a national level, that are set out in this strategy, each local authority has been given individual targets within those numbers. So the headline national numbers are in this, and I was showing them earlier. Each individual authority has been given its target and also the funding provision to help the local authority meet that target. And the targets that we've set at this stage are out to 2017. Okay? So each authority is there. Now, these are on our department's website. So if you're by any chance you're not familiar with them, or you haven't seen the detailed list, or you want to see your own authorities, I'd encourage you to go and look at the department's website. These targets were announced at the beginning of April. There was a number of other announcements made since about a number of build projects as well on the 5th of May, and all of those projects are listed, and the amounts allocated for those build projects for each of the 31 local authorities are all listed on the department's website. So the targets, that's just, I wouldn't expect you to be, that's not easy to see there and to be able to take it down, but you can go to the department's website and get all of that information. And obviously, we would have a view in the department that it's absolutely crucial that everyone involved with local authorities knows what that target is for their local authority. Because if it's one of the bigger authorities and you've got a target like Dublin City Council there, 3,347 units out to 2017, our view would be it's really important the local authority knows how is it getting on against that target. Is it making progress? Has it built projects in train that are going to go a long way? Is it doing other areas? Has it got a number of voids that it's tackling? Is it buying some units? What are the different approaches being used by each individual authority to deliver on its target? When we're dealing with the local authorities, we're very much encouraging them to come forward with projects now. The funding is there. We need good projects that can get through and will, are good value for money. But the funding is there with the good projects. We made an announcement on the 5th of May of build projects, 1,700 houses, over 100 projects, all 31 authorities were covered. We intend to make another announcement as soon as we get another round of assessments done, possibly before the summer break. And there's some local authorities we'll be dealing with, and in fairness, they would have a queue of projects, they're ready to go. Other local authorities we'll be dealing with, it wouldn't be as well prepared as that. And we'd really need the local authorities to come forward with really good projects to us, and the funding is there, and once they're working within those targets, there isn't a problem. We need them to have the focus on those targets. So I think that's that from me, and I'm going to hand over to Nina. I think, is it? Okay. I'll look at the available afterwards for Q&A.
Thank you.